Welcome to Nugget 126 with Steve Groman. We've sort of been off the path for a couple weeks here, and we're trying to regroup as things continue to unfold in our nation, and we do ask you to please pray diligently and seek God's face. Pray for our nation and our president in this tumultuous times.
And important times.
Yes. We do need to honor our Creator, and people are still in school. Life is going on in so many other respects, and we need to continue on with what we are doing. Back to Science News, September 2020. Woolly rhinos. That's kind of funny. I'd never heard of a woolly rhino, and I know you said you've heard of woolly rhinos, but went extinct because climate change transformed Arctic habitats. Researchers contend. Now you might think, what on earth does this matter in this day and time? Well, it does matter because climate change is one of the great control features that world leaders have used to control us and to make policy decisions. And so the whole climate issue is a huge control issue. They put it out in these science publications just to continue I'll just call it the lie of climate change. But there is climate change, just not the way they say it.
Yeah, we have to remember, even in this article, just about everything they say is a belief system. It's not going to be backed by science, as we'll see some of this.
In this magazine, they have a section on life and evolution, and that's where we get this article for today's Nugget.
The title of this article is Ice Age Die-Off Blamed on Climate Shift. Ancient DNA may exonerate humans in woolly rhino extinction. Rather than getting wiped out by Ice Age hunters, woolly rhinos charged to extinction when the climate turned warm and wet, a study of ancient DNA suggests.
And as we read through this, put on your critical thinking cap, as we've recommended in so many nuggets, and just listen to every sentence and how there is something that is absolutely unscientific in each sentence.
Yes. Numbers of breeding woolly rhinos in northeastern Siberia stayed relatively constant from nearly 30,000 years ago until at least about 18,500 years ago, long after people first reached the region, scientists report in Current Biology. Let's think about this. So obviously, these are belief systems on these time frames because there's no such thing as those types of time frames. By around 14,000 years ago, woolly rhinos vanished. So they are saying that they're about 18,500. Now notice here, 30,000 years ago until at least about 18,500. They say at 14,000 years ago, they vanished. A shift to warm, rainy conditions, which occurred roughly between 14,600 years ago and 12,800 years ago, quote, likely played a large role in the rapid decline of this cold-adapted species. All right, let's pause right here for a moment. Just like with the woolly mammoths, just because an animal has hair, that does not mean it lives in a cold climate. Think of a male lion. He's got a lot of hair. Hair can insulate from heat just as well as from cold, but notice how it talks about turning warm early on in the article and wet, and then it talks about rapid decline of these cold-adapted species when the climate got warm and rainy. If there is such a thing as any truth and validity to this article, it is simply explaining before and after the flood. That's what it was when the climate changed. And it certainly did do that because of the flood. It says, during that period, open expanses featuring vegetation that woolly rhinos like to eat were replaced by forest and shrub-dominated tundra. Once again, in a pre-flood condition, there would be a lot of vegetation, like we've talked about in many nuggets and in our series, and show evidence of that. Hunters could have added to the rhinos' woes, but the main extinction distinction goes to climate change, Lord contends. Researchers have argued for decades about whether climate change or humans had a larger effect on extinctions of large animals such as woolly rhinos and woolly mammoths, as the Ice Age approached its end around 11,700 years ago. See how the conjecture is all built into this. This is what they believe, so they're going to see the evidence through that filter. Then it says here, Lord's group extracted a complete set of nuclear DNA from a roughly 18,530-year-old woolly rhino bone. Okay, now this is interesting because it says they extracted some nuclear DNA from a roughly 18,530-year-old bone. That statement is contradictory in and of itself, and nuclear DNA is essentially DNA from the cell nucleus. The team compared genetic variants between matching chromosomes to identify regions that were likely more ancestral than others, allowing the researchers to reconstruct changes in past breeding population. A bit of nuclear DNA from a bone, now they're going to go and talk about the entire population of these creatures.
And talk about their breeding numbers.
Yeah.
That started around 1 million years ago, and by about 152,000 years ago, reached a peak of some 21,000 animals, the team estimates. Seriously? How can they verify any of this?
Yeah, they
This
can't.
is not scientific.
No, it's not. And
Yet this is what's going to control our cars, everything about us. they're going to control because of some hypothetical situation
some
here.
kind of climate change type of thing. But we're not trying to pick on these publications and or these articles in and of themselves. Problem is, people read this stuff. People hear it on the various news and television anchors, and people tend to believe everything that is said about this type of an issue. We need to be very cautious of that because there is no way that any of this can be verified scientifically.
Humans entered northeastern Siberia by about 31,600 years ago. Okay, sure, right. It's not known when people first inhabited Siberia year-round. They know the year down to that date, but they don't know how long it was or when it was that they stayed the entire time. But the new analysis shows that woolly rhinos continue to thrive long after humans likely knew of the animal's existence. From about 29,700 to 18,530 years ago, when the animal that yielded the DNA was alive. Breeding woolly rhinos numbered about 10,600. Where on earth are they coming up with this information and these numbers? They didn't talk about that they found a field of bones, and they found
from a bone.
10,600 horns or 10,600 of the same anything so they could get this kind of number. It is all just science fiction.
It is science fiction. But I love the way the article ends. It says, there is no evidence so far of human hunting being a deciding factor in woolly rhino extinction. Well, the interesting thing about that is you could go to any museum or state park, national park that would include anything to do with woolly rhinos, woolly mammoths, and carvings and things, and they're all going to have pictures of human hunters on these things. Some kind of caveman type of creature. It's a belief system that they have, as we know, not a science issue. It is nothing but a belief system that they have, and they build this stuff up, and we have to be cautious about just receiving and believing everything that these people say. A lot of times, even in a short nugget like this, people will say, well, of course. But we got to remember, these are the kind of information points that are in our children's textbooks.
And that people hear on their Facebook News and Yahoo News and all that, and they just are enamored by it. I do want to say one more thing, how Pontus Skoglund is an evolutionary geneticist. Everything he's looking at is through an evolutionary worldview. Few examples of ancient DNA have been gleaned from any large Ice Age animals that died out, including woolly rhinos. Few examples, yet they have, I'm going to go back to this 10,600, but they have few examples. It's just ridiculous. We do want to tell you about our lessons. Hopefully you can purchase these for any students in your life or even for your own family just to get solid information on creation versus evolution. We have 12 lessons. Actually, the whole Ice Age and mammoths are presented in our lesson 12, which is a Q&A lesson, which is filled with all kinds of great things like, did Noah take fish and sea creatures on the ark? Was there an ice age? And what's the difference between a mutation and adaptation? Do evolutionists use the octopi, platypus, and tadpole as missing links? Why do we still have monkeys if we evolved from monkeys? And what about cavemen? And what is the difference between macro and microevolution? And what about the dating method, specifically carbon dating? Does that prove anything? What about Pangea? Were all the continents connected at one point in time? And then, I don't feel qualified to homeschool. What can you say to help me? And because of the COVID, a lot of you have become homeschool parents, not by choice, but by default, I guess it would be. Please help support our ministry through purchasing these valuable lessons. They are on USB flash drives. Each lesson is $20. Any 4 lessons total $72, and all lessons are total $180, and you can watch them on your television or your computer.
Just about every night that I do a service included a question and answer time, because a lot of times people are curious about things. They want some answers. So this is very important that we do have answers for our children and for adults also. When I open up to question and answer, it is amazing the types of questions that do come up. So I want to encourage you, if you're a parent, if you have children at the home, ask them questions. You'll be amazed at some of the things that they may be struggling with, or maybe not struggling, but just curious about. Our lessons include just about every topic of creation versus evolution, which is immense. We want to get that information out to people.
I do want to list again what each lesson is. Lesson 1, why is this important? Lesson 2, Bible or billions. Lesson 3, Noah's big boat. Lesson 4, after the flood. Lesson 5, misconceptions about space. Lesson 6, all about dinosaurs. Lesson 7, words mean things. Lesson 8, Darwin's legacy. Lesson 9, rock solid proof. Lesson 10, living proof. Lesson 11, in 6 days. Lesson 12, question and answers.
1 Timothy 6:20 and 21 says, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust. Avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith.
And in the NLT, it reads, Timothy, guard what God has entrusted to you. Avoid godless, foolish discussions with those who oppose you with their so-called knowledge. Being grounded in biblical truths is more important than ever. Our nation is changing and our values are swiftly being eroded. We must avoid science falsely so-called. Thank you.